Hazelman. I'm from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Even before I was born, my parents were each post-abortive. After I was conceived, I was near... After I was conceived, I was very nearly aborted also. But they decided to marry, and through God's mercy, they decided my mother could carry me to term. Then they divorced in 1950 when I was a baby, and I was raised in the culture of death. My mother became a professional salesperson. Abandoned and alone, she became bitter and angry. She was ashamed of being a mother, and she would say that she had connections who would take care of unwanted pregnancies. She was emotionally and physically abusive. I never heard from my dad until I called him at Christmas time when I was 17 and a half years old. Early in my teens, I began to blame God for my circumstances and turned away from him, even though I knew that was wrong. Even though I knew he was there to help me. I rebelled not against my evil circumstances, but that God permitted them. That was a mistake I would repeat again later in my life. I am culpable and accountable for this because I knew better. I began to go in the wrong direction. When I was 17 years old, my mother asked me if I could possibly be pregnant. I admitted it was possible. She called a physician. He met us at his office on a Saturday and gave me a test, which he said was inconclusive. Then he gave me a shot, just in case. My body went through many changes that day. My tongue swelled up. I felt like my head would explode. My whole body felt awful. I cramped and cramped for hours. After some painful hours, I expelled a tiny human being with a real immortal soul, who already possessed the capacity to love and who was known and loved by God. After that day, I went into denial. I felt subhuman. Suicidal tendencies became a daily battle. I believed deep down inside that goodness was impossible for me, that I had fallen over the edge and there was no return. I sought solace in relationships and suffered a first miscarriage at the age of 20. A deep despair became my way of life. In 1972, I was married. The first 5 years of our marriage, I suffered 5 miscarriages. I had another miscarriage after the birth of our first child. Our third child was born 18 days after our foster son was married. I suffered a severe postpartum psychosis afterwards and was hospitalized in 1986 for 2 weeks. This was followed with years of counseling, trying to make some sense out of my life. After our oldest daughter left for college in 1997, I was very, very sad. For 3 years, I went to bed crying every night and woke up crying. I cried throughout the days. I thought my tears would never end. I was late in the year 2000 that I realized the shot I had been given as a teen had caused an abortion. I began my healing journey with 2 Rachel's Project retreats in 2001, a pilgrimage to Poland in 2002, and again in 2004, and a Rachel's Vineyard retreat in the spring of 2007. I was privileged to help with a Rachel's Vineyard retreat in October 2007. I had wanted to give back some of the goodness that had been restored to me, because I finally learned that God is close to the brokenhearted. My first child was taken from me through the violence of abortion. Theodore Joseph would never be held, would never be rocked to sleep, would never take his first steps, would never laugh, would never cry, would never be scolded. He would never achieve the joy of overcoming hard obstacles. He'd never experience sorrow or happiness or rain or snow or sunshine. He would never learn to swim. He would never learn to read or do algebra. He would never realize hopes and dreams in this life because he was not allowed to be born. I am so deeply, deeply sorry for my abortion and for the way it affected my ability to be mother to our living children. For over 3 decades, my abortion held me in bondage to feelings of regret, remorse, depression, and despair. My soul became a slave to self-hatred and worthlessness. My sanity was the price that I paid. Women and their precious children deserve better than abortion. I deeply and sorrowfully regret my abortion, and I promise you this, I will be silent no more.